You're listening to Secure Freedom Radio with Frank Gaffney from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C.
Welcome back. We are joined for this segment by our friend Douglas Murray, the founder and driving force behind a tremendous organization in the United Kingdom known as the Centre For Social Cohesion. And Douglas, it is always a great treat to have you with us. Sometimes we get one or the other of your colleagues, but it's really wonderful to have you, especially in the aftermath of a very important new publication by your center that I want to talk about, entitled Islamist Terrorism, The British Connections. So welcome back to Secure Freedom Radio. How are you?
Very good to be with you again, Frank. Always a pleasure.
Terrific. Let's start on this book. It's a strikingly comprehensive treatment of an extraordinarily serious problem in your country. Tell us what you've tried to do with the book and what you think we should take away from it, particularly here in the United States.
That's right. Well, the publication is a 600-page, basically sort of telephone directory-sized publication, which goes through every single person who has been convicted over the last decade in Britain of Islamist-related offences, people who've been involved in terrorism plots, people who've been involved in incitement to murder, and members of banned organisations, all of this. And it's the most comprehensive, the only comprehensive study of this done, as far as we know, anywhere in the world. But it's particularly important because, of course, Britain has shown itself to be a hub in recent years globally, where jihad is being not just imported into Britain, but exported from Britain around the world. So this, among other things, aims to give governments and police and others the most important raw data, which I think shows, among other things, that government has been way off on some of this, that they have repeatedly said, you cannot profile a terrorist, you cannot profile the sort of person who is likely to become a terrorist. That's clearly just flat out wrong, because the analysis from this report goes on to analyze by age and gender, educational background, employment background, and national place of residence, origin, and so on. And actually, although it's certainly not, you can't pinpoint who is going to become a terrorist, you can certainly pinpoint the people who are more likely to be.
Yes. We're talking with Douglas Murray of the Centre for Social Cohesion in London. Let me just clarify a point. Douglas, you're saying that the government has taken the position that you can't. What you're suggesting with this important new book is that you certainly can develop profiles that will give you insights into the kinds of populations, at least, from which terrorists are like to spring. But the question seems to me as much as whether you can or can't as whether you may, whether you must do this sort of profiling. And that leads me to the second question I wanted to talk to you about in this connection, and that is, you've had a new government installed in recent months in the United Kingdom, and I know the previous one, the Labour government, had an endemic problem, not only with failing to do this sort of prophylactic work, for want of a better term, but actually embraced the Muslim Association Britain and other Muslim Brotherhood fronts as part of their sort of outreach effort to the Muslim community there. Do you see changes with respect to either of these kinds of behavior on the part of the new coalition government in the UK?
Well, it's a complex picture. There are several reasons. One is that, of course, it's a coalition government, and that means the Conservatives are in coalition for the first time in many years with the Liberal Democrat Party here, which is, I would think, against some fairly stiff competition, the worst party in Britain on the issues that we're talking about here. And one of the things is that, as a result, the messages that have come out from the new government are very mixed. For instance, they have succeeded in banning already several incitement clerics, hate preachers, have banned them from coming into this country. That's a very good early sign. But on a lot of other stuff, it's clear that the government isn't getting it at all.
Yeah. Let me segue quickly to another topic, because a place where the previous government actually materially contributed, I think, to the sort of triumphalism of our enemies in this space, the so-called Sharia adherent types, was with the release of Abdul Basil al-Megrahi. And this is the one man convicted of the attack that destroyed the Panam 103 and loss of hundreds of people's lives, including many Americans. It now turns out, and there's a Senate investigation here underway, as you know, Douglas, that is going to get into this, but it turns out that some of the medical grounds on which this individual was released and sent back to Libya may have been fraudulent. What are your thoughts on this particular caper?
Well, several things. One is that, the whole episode stinks. And stinks far more than I think most politicians in Britain realize. And I certainly have been impressed by the attention that Americans have continued to put on this. And it's very important you do keep on putting this attention onto this, because the British government would like this to slip. Megrahi was released from prison by somebody called Kenny MacAskill, who's the Scottish Parliament's so-called Justice Minister. As you know, Scotland, since the Blair administration, has had a devolved parliament, a kind of Mickey Mouse organisation. Mm-hmm. But Kenny MacAskill, the so-called Justice Secretary, released al-Megrahi, saying that he was releasing him because of if you remember that horrible, fawning and repetitive speech of his. He said that he was releasing him because of the unique compassion of the Scottish people, the extraordinary generosity of the Scottish people. He did it as some kind of advert for visitscotland.com. And the fact is that it's turned out that actually now that he's in the soup on this, he's trying to pretend it wasn't his call after all. And it now turns out that he didn't even bother to look at the medical records of al-Megrahi with anything like the scrutiny required. I can tell you, if you're the Scottish devolved Parliament's Justice Secretary, there's not very much to do with your time. And I would have thought he could have found time to at least find out whether Megrahi was really going to die in 6 weeks, or whether he was going to live for another 20 years. Yeah. But he didn't do that.
But he may well be doing exactly the latter in Libya today, and touting the triumph, as I say, over all of us as a result. Listen, in the last...
By the way, one other quick thing on that is we can't ignore the fact that it was, we keep on being told at the moment about Libya coming in from the cold, about Saif Gaddafi, Colonel Gaddafi's son, and the possible forward-looking nature of the regime. Gaddafi Jr. was the one, of course, who brought Megrahi back to Libya as a hero. This should not be forgotten either.
Yes, and won't be, I hope. Very quickly, we have about 45 seconds. Can you give us a quick burst on the lessons of the fight over the mega mosque near the Olympic site for our Ground Zero mosque fight?
Well, the most important lesson is that it has to be a grassroots thing. It has to involve people from all sorts of communities. One of the things that was very persuasive in the mega mosque thing here, which has not yet been finished, was that, among others, groups of local moderate Muslims appealed against the mosque being built. But the most important thing that I think you can take from it there is this. What is attempting to be happening is this, that people want to try to portray the answer to militant Islam as Islam. But the answer to Osama bin Laden is some wonderful moderate version of Islam. The answer to radical Islam is not more Islam. The answer to radical Islam is secular, strong, liberal democracies.
There you go.
We cannot fight this or win this on Islam's terms, and we mustn't allow people to pretend otherwise.
Take that to heart, Douglas Murray, and we'll have to let you go. Thank you so much for joining us, as always, from the Centre for Social Cohesion.